So I like to start these interviews with a simple question. Not really that simple, but what is your current favorite song?
Current favorite song?
Yeah.
Oh, geez.
It could be old, it could be new, just whatever you're listening to right now.
I've been listening to a song a lot. It's called "The Witch Queen of New Orleans."
Very, very good song.
Yes.
Yeah, I know exactly which one you're talking about.
So I've been trying to think of a way that I can get enough money to put that in a movie.
Hey, I'm a music supervisor. If we ever want to work
There we
together,
go.
I'm for
Put a spell on you.
So anyways, I'm very fascinated with the in-between era of creatives, meaning you know what you want to do and then you make something. What is that difficult time in the middle is something I'm very fascinated with. So I want to start back when you're in college. And in that time, you decided to create DEC with your friend Louise O. I don't want to pronounce his name.
Juarez.
Thank you. Thank you. So before we get into that, what was your journey? How did you start wanting to make films, or was that even your first creative outlet?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first, very good research on your part.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I started when I was really little. I loved writing stories. I wanted to be an author. So I would write like literally novels. Like I'd take these little composition books that you get at Walmart for like 99 cents, and I'd rip the cover off because it would stay binded. And I'd draw covers on the first page, and I'd write, there were 100 pages, so I'd write a 100-page book. So I've always loved writing and storytelling. And then when I got into high school, like middle school, high school, YouTube got really big, and we were watching like a lot of Dude Perfect and stuff like that, people who made skits. So I loved like being funny and doing stuff like that. So we decided to start doing comedy skits, me and a good buddy of mine from high school. And so through that, as we went through high school and we started looking at what do we want to do in college, I started getting really into filmmaking and started getting bigger into it. Tarantino was a huge inspiration of mine. And I started seeing, how I could translate this love of storytelling and making YouTube videos into something maybe more serious. So I went to college, made my major creative media production at the University of Oklahoma, and started doing the YouTube videos just at a higher level, and kind of switched from the comedy genre more into trying to do more serious stuff, which it's difficult because you're really putting yourself out there. Comedy, you can always play off as, well, it was meant to be a joke anyway, you know? So if it doesn't land, it's like, well, we weren't trying to be serious anyway. But when you make a drama or something like that, you're really just banking on, hoping people don't laugh. That's your worst nightmare, is people laugh when they're not supposed to.
But in the case with one of your short films, The Funeral, which I watched preparing for this interview, it was such a unique tone, I think you were saying with there. So it's funny at times, but it's also like such a serious topic. You don't really know to laugh or not and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So did you make that during when you were in college and stuff like that, or was this after the fact?
That was my senior project, like my capstone project. So that was the biggest thing I had done. I was still I'd done a few more serious things, and for the final project, I wanted to get back to those comedic roots. So I wrote something that really came about as a comedy, and then ended up putting a bit more dramatic tones and themes in it. And so we made that. That was my big final shebang at OU.
Okay, awesome. So you're at that point in life, you're making movies, and you kind of know what style and tone you want to go with, and also still exploring. So when did DEC come into the mix?
So that's a funny story. So DEC was officially founded in 2020, but it goes way back. So the name of my YouTube channel was Duh Epicness Channel.
Okay.
When we started making more serious films, quickly realized that's a terrible name for anything. So we just shortened it to DEC Productions, basically. So we did that, and we made that right before, when I finished The Funeral, we wanted to make a short film out of college, and that ended up being In the Face of Evil. And so we wanted to make a company and do it the right way, so we founded DEC, and that's how that came to be.
Okay, so walk me through that first project you were doing together, Into the Face of Evil, you were just saying. So, like, you decided to make this. What was this story? What were you trying to convey with that story? I mean, like, were you trying to say a horror movie? Were you trying to do something else? Or is it a credit to your name so people can find you more? Like, what was your purpose? Was it just the story?
Yeah, well, with The Funeral, I felt like I could do a lot better. And the thing that because it was comedy, but we had a lot of pressure from the school to like put more serious themes in it. So I felt like the tone, like you're saying, it does go back and forth. And to me, I wanted to practice tone. So really, it was just flexing that muscle of practicing tone. I thought the best way to do that would be a horror film. And so every project I do, I try to go bigger and better. And I didn't want to be, you see a lot of people, they graduate college and then they never make a movie again.
Yeah, they just
So I wanted to, as soon as we graduated, I said, let's make something immediately. Let's make sure we don't lose this drive. And so we went and we made In the Face of Evil, which was the biggest project we'd done up to that point. We started a company. We had to actually raise money for it. We couldn't just pay for it out of pocket. We hired actors. So it was a great way for me to practice tone and to learn. At that point, I'd been working professionally in the industry for about 6 months or something like that. So I was able to take some of those things and learn how a production works at this level.
So I went on your IMDb, funny enough, and every single credit to your name. You're the first person I've interviewed with this, but literally every film that Oklahoma claims to be the biggest film you worked on in some capacity, which is incredible. So how did that journey start? Because I know the film industry works. You know someone, and then it does that. So what was the first opportunity you got that kind of led to those happening?
Yeah, so there's a guy I met in college. His name's Anik Zoha, and he was a fellow filmmaker. And I really looked up to him. He's a couple of years ahead of me, and he had started working on sets like around his senior year. So I just kept bugging him. I was like, as soon as you can get me on a set, get me on a set. Yeah. And so right after I graduated in 2020, height of the pandemic, in June of that year, Oklahoma is one of the few states that still allowed productions to shoot. So I jumped on this little movie called Joey and Ella about a talking kangaroo, worked for free as an intern. And then through that, I just kept meeting people, and I just worked as hard as I could and tried to do a really good job. And so I started doing a lot of PA work, production assistant, and I found a real niche in the assistant director department on these sets. So I started doing a lot of non-union assistant directing work, because it's really, when you're doing YouTube videos and these short films, as much as you are the creative and you're the writer, the director, but you're also very much scheduling, in charge of logistics. So I knew how to do that and how to shoot things in a certain way that made sense. So assistant directing just kind of felt like a natural place for me to fall. And so I've been doing that for several years now. I've got to travel across the country and do very cool jobs, work with some amazing people, learned a lot of good stuff. And it's really, the reason I made Bloodstained Ivory, the reason I was able to get across the finish line is because of all those productions I'd worked on and see how they do it, what not to do, what to do, and then we put that into practice.
Okay, so awesome. I want to move on to your film premiering here. So you get done with In the Face of Evil. You're working on these productions. How did this story for Bloodstained Ivory happen? Was it something that you've already written years ago and just finally got to do, or was it like, I'm inspired and you wrote this?
Yeah, so when we were doing In the Face of Evil, at some point during that, I remember telling Luis about an idea I had, and it really was just a visual at that time about like bloody hands playing piano keys. I thought that was a really interesting visual that could mean a lot of different things. And so I started thinking about, okay, how did we get to that point? So like what could happen, backstage or something like that. And I was really thinking about it as a short film at that point, because In the Face of Evil was so kind of big. I was like, I want to try to do something a little bit more contained. And then I ended up making a 2-hour movie. But yeah, so that's kind of how it became. Because In the Face of Evil was so long, I felt like we'd missed a real opportunity. Like if we just shot 2 or 3 more days, added a few more pages of script, we could have had a feature-length script. So we ended up with a really awkward running time that was too long to be programmed as a short, too short to be programmed as a feature. So I was like, let's just go ahead and make that jump, and let's make a feature film. So I started exploring ideas of how I could make a feature film with that visual in mind and the challenge of getting to that point in the story.
Awesome. Okay. So I strongly believe that every creative comes out of a project learning something new about themselves or their creative ability. So after you got done wrapping Bloodstained Ivory, what did you learn? It could be personal. It could be film-oriented. Like, what did you come out of it with?
I think I learned that I can do it, that it is possible. And the difference between a person who's directed a film and who hasn't directed a film is just the doing part. And when I came out of that and we had wrapped, it's just one of those moments of like, we did it. We actually made a feature film, something that seemed so unattainable just 5 years before. So I think that was the biggest thing, is just like, if you put your mind to it and you don't take no for an answer and you just pursue it as hard as you can, that anything's possible. So I think it was a good thing for me to learn, because now going forward, it's like, okay, if you want to make even bigger movies, just put the same thing into practice, but on a larger scale, and just keep going for it.
Yeah, awesome. So for people that haven't seen this movie or have seen this movie, can you please give them a synopsis of what it's about?
Absolutely, yeah. So it's about an aspiring concert pianist. He's in his last year of music school at Chester Conservatory, which is a fictitious school that I made up because of alliteration. And he wants to perform at his senior recital. He wants to captivate audiences. He wants to get agents. He wants to be a concert pianist. He wants his name in lights, but he freezes up at his recital. So the future is kind of like it's in question. He doesn't know what's going to happen. So he starts competing for a spot in a school showcase, which is like his final chance. It's even bigger than a senior recital, but he starts to realize that he's not quite as talented as he might have thought, and that it's going to take a lot more than just hard work and talent to get what he wants. So he starts taking desperate action, and his mental health starts deteriorating, and he kind of loses his mind, and it starts to become, his relationships become destroyed. There's violence, there's sabotage, envy, heartbreak, everything you could imagine, and it really just spirals out of control. So that's kind of what it's
Awesome.
about.
So for people that have seen the film and people that are anticipating it, is there any like little Easter eggs you have personally within at all in the movie, like little things that probably not on first watch people will catch?
I think a fun one you could do is, so the movie's obviously about classical pianism, so there are a lot of classical piano pieces that the characters play in the movie, and what we did, we sampled a lot of those pieces and we mixed them into the score.
Awesome.
So I think if you listen to the score closely, you might be able to catch a few of those melodies hidden deep within all the layers.
That's really, really cool. So my last question for you is every time a movie comes out or something like that, people see what's on screen. They're seeing the cinematography, actors. They know who the director is. What about the other people that are on the set that helped make this project happen that probably won't get the praise, watching on the screen, just a normal person? So could you shout out a couple people?
Absolutely. Let me pull up the crew list. No, I mean, everybody did such an amazing job. People that don't get a lot of credit sometimes, like Grip and Electric. So Cash Kirchner was our gaffer. Blake Bennett was our key grip. Cody Pennington was a grip on it. Hair and makeup was great. Caitlin Howe was our hair and makeup person. Costumes, Dason Macon was our costume designer. All our PAs, Anders, he was our key set PA. He was there every day. It was beautiful. Justin Jane was our assistant director. As an assistant director myself, I know how hard that job is, especially on a low-budget indie. Yeah. He did amazing. Sam McClure, Sean Hancock were our second assistant directors. They were fantastic. Just up and down the board, it was a bunch of people who they were there because they love cinema and they love film. They were not doing it for the money, believe me. So, yeah, it was just fantastic. I couldn't ask for a better crew.
Awesome. And lastly, would you plug where people can find your movie when it eventually comes out, or where they can follow you to see your next projects, so they can, support?
Absolutely. Yeah, if they follow, they can just follow BSI Movie on Instagram. And we'll be announcing any more festival releases that we have. And then hopefully in the very near future, we'll have some worldwide distribution that we can share. But the goal is to get it out there so as many people can see it as possible. So yeah, give them a follow. We also have DEC Productions, our Instagram, so that any future projects, you'll probably be able to catch them there.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.